A respected judge, a man trusted to decide the fate of criminals. A man who spent decades sending dangerous people to prison. But on one summer night, the tables turned because that message was not sent by a criminal. It was sent by a judge. And the woman who had just been shot was his wife. But something wasn't right. The man who admitted pulling the trigger would later claim it was all a terrible accident. An accident that ended a 27-year marriage. An accident that left a family shattered. An accident that some people never believed, and what happened next would expose a story far darker than anyone expected. This is the story of Judge Jeffrey Ferguson, and the single gunshot that destroyed everything. For years, Jeffrey Ferguson lived what appeared to be an extraordinary life. He wasn't just another attorney, he wasn't just another prosecutor. He was a judge, someone trusted with enormous power. Every day, people stood before him hoping for mercy, others feared the decisions he would make. Inside the courtroom, he represented authority, control, discipline, justice, or at least that was the image people saw. His wife, Cheryl Ferguson, had been beside him for decades. Friends described her as warm, kind, and family-oriented. The couple had built a life together, a home, a family, a future. From the outside, everything appeared normal, but appearances can be deceiving. And behind closed doors small cracks were beginning to form. At first, nobody noticed because the warning signs were subtle, quiet and almost invisible, but they were there, and one day those warning signs would become impossible to ignore. August 3, 2023. What should have been an ordinary family dinner would later become one of the most important moments in the entire investigation. Jeffrey, Cheryl and their son together at a Mexican restaurant, just another evening, or so it seemed. As dinner continued, the conversation turned toward money, family finances, a subject that had reportedly caused arguments before. The mood shifted, voices grew sharper, facial expressions hardened. And then something strange happened, something investigators would later focus on. Jeffrey allegedly made a gun gesture toward his wife. A hand shaped like a pistol pointed directly at her. At the time it may have seemed insignificant. A moment of anger, a joke, a gesture. Nothing more, but the police had no idea that this tiny detail would later become crucial. Because only hours later, a retrial gun would appear, and someone would end up dead. After dinner, the family returned home. The argument wasn't over. In fact, it was only the beginning. Inside the living room the tension continued. A television played in the background. The crime drama Breaking Bad filled the room with sound. But nobody was paying attention, because something much more dangerous was unfolding. Witness testimony later described a heated exchange. Words were spoken, accusations were made, emotions intensified. And then came another statement investigators would never forget. Cheryl reportedly challenged her husband. Words that would become haunting after her death. According to testimony, she essentially dared him to point a real gun at her. Nobody in that room knew those words would become tragically prophetic. Jeffrey Ferguson carried a Glock handgun in an ankle holster, a habit that would soon become the center of an international news story. Seconds passed. Then everything happened at once. A hand moved, a weapon appeared, a shot rang out, one bullet, one trigger pull, one moment, and an entire family was destroyed. But what happened next changed everything. Because the first person to describe the shooting was Jeffrey Ferguson himself. As Cheryl lay mortally wounded, chaos erupted inside the home. Their son rushed forward. He tackled his father, fought to gain control of the weapon, and desperately tried to save his mother. CPR began. 911 was called, but time was running out. Then investigators discovered something astonishing. A text message sent almost immediately after the shooting. A message that would later become one of the most powerful pieces of evidence in the entire case. The message read, "I just lost it. I just shot my wife." Not, "the gun went off." Not, "it was an accident." Not, "I dropped the weapon." Instead, "I just lost it." For words that prosecutors believed revealed exactly what happened. But the defense would soon offer a completely different explanation. And that explanation would divide jurors for years. Because according to Jeffrey Ferguson, the shooting was never supposed to happen. And if that was true, then everyone had misunderstood the case, or had they? At first the case seemed straightforward. A husband shoots his wife, he admits it, police make an arrest, case closed. But something wasn't right. Because Jeffrey Ferguson wasn't denying the shooting. He was denying the murder, and that changed everything. According to the defense, Jeffrey Ferguson never intended to kill his wife. They claimed the gun discharged accidentally. The argument: Ferguson had removed the Glock from his ankle holster and was attempting to place it on a cluttered coffee table. Then somehow the weapon fired. One shot, one tragic mistake, at least according to the defense. Suddenly, the entire investigation looked different. If the shooting was accidental, then Jeffrey Ferguson wasn't a murderer. He was simply a man who made a terrible mistake. And many people began to wonder, could that actually be true? Because what investigators discovered next would complicate everything. As the case moved toward trial, support for Ferguson emerged from unexpected places. Some friends stood by him. Some family members believed him. Even more surprising, his own son did not initially believe his father intentionally killed his mother. And that detail would later become crucial. Because prosecutors now faced a difficult challenge. They had to prove intent. Not just the shooting intent. The defense pointed to Ferguson's legal career, his age, his lack of criminal history, his emotional breakdown after the shooting. They argued that his immediate remorse showed this wasn't murder. This wasn't a calculated crime. This wasn't a planned killing. This was an accident, a devastating accident. And for a while that explanation seemed believable. Maybe too believable. Because hidden beneath the accident theory, investigators had discovered details that painted a very different picture. Details that many jurors could not ignore. The same 4 words kept coming back. I just lost it. Not, the gun went off. Not, I dropped it. Not, it was accidental. And prosecutors believed those words revealed the truth. But the truth was far darker. Then came the prosecution's most powerful argument. The gun gesture at the restaurant. The argument about money. The challenge issued at home. The weapon is drawn from the ankle holster. The eyewitness testimony from their son. And finally, the text message. Separately, each piece of evidence raised questions. Together, they formed a story. A story prosecutors said pointed to one conclusion: murder. The prosecution argued that this wasn't a random accident. This wasn't a firearm slipping from someone's hand. This was anger, a split-second decision, a moment of rage, and one fatal trigger pull. Police had no idea that one additional detail would strengthen their case even further. When investigators searched Ferguson's home, they discovered dozens of firearms, thousands upon thousands of rounds of ammunition. This was not someone unfamiliar with guns. This was someone who had spent years around them. Someone who understood how they worked, and that detail would later become crucial because prosecutors argued that an experienced gun owner would know exactly what he was doing. The case had transformed. What started as an alleged accident now looked very different, and soon, a jury would have to decide which version of events was true. The trial attracted national attention not because of who died, but because of who stood accused. A judge, a man who once sentenced criminals, now sitting in the defendant's chair. Weeks of testimony followed, experts, investigators, witnesses, family members. Everyone trying to answer the same question. Was it murder, or was it an accident? Then came a shocking development. The jury could not agree. After days of deliberation, the jury became hopelessly deadlocked. 11 jurors favored conviction. 1 juror did not, and just like that, the case exploded into uncertainty. What happened next changed everything. Because prosecutors refused to walk away, a second trial was scheduled. New jury, same evidence. 2 years after the shooting, Jeffrey Ferguson returned to court one final time. Not as a judge, not as a prosecutor, but as a convicted murderer. The defense asked for mercy. They argued that Ferguson had already lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom. But prosecutors argued something different. Cheryl Ferguson had lost everything too, including her life. The judge overseeing sentencing rejected the accident claim. The evidence, she said, was overwhelming. Then came the sentence. 35 years to life in prison. The room fell quiet. The decision was final. The man who once wore the robe would now wear a prison uniform. For many people, the verdict ended the legal battle, but it could never heal the emotional damage. A wife was gone, a mother was gone, a family had been torn apart forever. The tragedy left questions that no court could answer. How does a family recover from something like this? How does a son process losing both parents in a single night? One to death, the other to prison. Those answers may never come, because some wounds never fully heal. In the end, the jury believed Jeffrey Ferguson intentionally killed his wife. The court called it murder. The defense called it a tragic accident. And the debate surrounding that night continues even today. But one fact remains impossible to dispute. A woman lost her life, a family lost its future, and a judge lost everything. Perhaps the most disturbing part of this story is how quickly an ordinary evening became a nightmare. A dinner, an argument, a single decision, and a life forever changed. What do you think? Was this truly murder? Or was it a tragic accident that spiraled into something far worse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more real criminal cases, courtroom mysteries, and true crime investigations, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next case may be even more unbelievable than this one. And trust us, you won't want to miss it.